If you're working 12 hours every day, setting relentless goals, pushing yourself to the limit to achieve them, but you're still falling short, you may have hit a wall that I've seen hundreds of my clients hit at some point in their business career. I want to show you exactly what that wall is, and more importantly, how to break through. Because it's not about how hard you push, but rather how skilled you are pulling the results you want into your life. Welcome back, I'm Castillo, founder of Selfmastered. I work with entrepreneurs one-on-one to help them become absolute elite performers, able to be consistent, disciplined, focused, and manage their minds in business like elite athletes. Because business is the ultimate competitive sport. It is open 24/7. It never stops, and there's always someone that is trying to take your lunch. And those who win are not those who know more marketing or sales than the others, but rather those that know how to manage themselves consistently under pressure and uncertainty. And my business, Selfmastered, what it does, we train founders into elite performance frameworks. And today I want to talk about a wall that I've seen hundreds of my clients hit at some point. Some people hit it at like 50K a month, some people hit it at like $1 million a month. I've even seen it when businesses making 100 million a year. So this does not depend on the business itself, it depends on the mind of the entrepreneur. And you probably heard the standard advice that if you want to win, you need to hustle, you need to push, you need to grind, you need to consistently be putting a lot of work. And that is standard advice that is typically good for the earliest stages of your business career. When you're pushing, you are accumulating experiences, you're putting in the reps, you are learning how to manage yourself under uncertainty. This is when you consistently track your time, when you set metrics, when you dial in your KPIs, when you architect your whole life to be able to perform in business. And this is really great for those who are starting out. But at some point, you're going to be hitting a wall. And that wall is the moment when the same skills that built you into a peak performer prevent you from going into the ultimate level, which is elite performance. And that is when you need to start learning how to pull the results you want into your life. Because you need to be as good as pushing as you need to be good at pulling. And what does that mean? That means that obsessing about an outcome and stressing yourself out in order to get it is not the way in which the best outcomes in life manifest. The best outcomes in life are always a product of consistently doing the right thing and trusting that the systems that you're operating eventually yield the outcome you want. So at some point, pushing super hard is going to have a detrimental effect. Typically, the curve goes like this. If you are at 0 in terms of results and you push, there's a point in which you end up hurting yourself. You end up burning out. You end up procrastinating. You end up eventually quitting. And that is why businesses fail. It's not because the entrepreneurs don't know what to do. It's because they quit because they've had enough of consistently pushing themselves to get to an outcome that never comes. So what is the solution? How do you break through that wall? How do you get to the next level without burning out? Well, we first need to understand what is the science behind that lack of results. Why do you really hit a wall? Well, the first thing we gotta understand is what I call the pressure paradox. The more you hustle in order to get something, the more activated you are during your day-to-day. The more cortisol, which is a stress hormone, floods your bloodstream. In other words, you are consistently in reaction mode, in fight or flight response. You're pushing, and you never really have the time to process the information. You don't have the time to strategically think what is the best move for you in order to get to that next level. And in very extreme cases, your prefrontal cortex, which is the rational side of the mind, ends up shutting down. So you end up being an emotional wreck in business. This is when you see people that lose their marbles because something doesn't go the way they want them to go. That is typically because their stress is through the roof. And when your stress is through the roof, when the baseline stress that you have in your bloodstream is super high, you really cannot think clearly. Your ability to learn is compromised. You do not remember facts and people's name as well. In other words, you are in a semi-permanent state of activation, as if you were in the front of a tiger all day, every day. That is not only a miserable way to live, but it's also very inefficient to succeed in business. So the pressure paradox, just because you care a lot about something doesn't mean that you're going to get it faster. Typically, it's quite the opposite. Now, that is the physiological side, how your stress, your hormones are affecting your ability to deliver. But there's a deeper thing, which is what I call the identity trap. And this is what catches most entrepreneurs. See, your mind has two sides. You have the conscious side and the subconscious side, right? And in order for you to perform, to get things done effectively, both sides need to be aligned. You need to want to do something and subconsciously believe that you actually care about that thing, you're able to get it, and you're not afraid of the outcome that you might get from it. That is the definition of any performance, where you are not sabotaging your conscious effort. Now, the problem is that when you have built an identity based on pushing, hustling, you do not contemplate the possibility of not pushing in order to get to your goals. You have become trapped by the identity of a hard worker. So the only thing you know how to do is to actually grind it out to the point that you end up sabotaging yourself. Every time you are tempted of looking at a different way of getting things done, of not grinding and hustling to get the results, you end up dismissing it because you believe it goes against your own values of hard work and grinding it out in order to get the results. And that is a very dangerous part to be in, because an entrepreneur should not be the number one worker in his or her own business. You should be the number one leader, consistently designing systems and hiring people to operate those systems. You don't need to do all of those things. So self-sabotage comes because every time you're trying to start pulling, we're going to go in a minute how you start pulling results into your life, you self-sabotage. And the last thing is process disconnect. So when you're too focused on an outcome, you end up missing the fundamentals that yield that outcome. In other words, if you care too much about the result, you end up forgetting what yields the result, which is the process, which is the system, which is the thing you do in any given day. So outputs end up being most important than inputs. And you fall for something that is also called the arrival fallacy, which is believing that there's some sort of end to the horizon, that you're going to be satisfied and content and happy when you hit 100K a month, $1 million a month, 10 million a month, whatever. But that is never the case. That is never the case because you always move the goalposts. So this is typically three things that I see in my clients that are already making good money, but they feel stuck and they're already going down this curve. They're stressed out of their minds, so they're consistently in fight or flight mode and they cannot think clearly. They made bad decisions as a result of it. They have built this identity of pushing, grinding, and hustling, so they could do not contemplate doing something that is not pushing, grinding, and hustling. And finally, they're disconnected from the process. They're too focused on getting the outcome, too focused on proving themselves or others that they can get the outputs, that they end up forgetting that it's all about the inputs. If you master the inputs, you will eventually get the outcomes because the outcomes always take care of yourself. So how do we reverse this? How do we start pulling the results in our life? And this is nothing woo-woo, no manifestation, no bullshit. This is literally understanding what yields the outcomes you want in your life. It's not about the universe helping you. It's about you actually getting the things that you deserve because you do not sabotage yourself in the process. The first thing we do is that we, of course, lower stress. And this is done through physiology. And this is also done through psychological intervention, right? Physiology. So physiology, as you know, it pertains to the nervous system, it pertains to your body. In essence, you start having rest and recovery protocols embedded throughout your day that help you find your best line, remove unnecessary stress, and consistently give your brain the ability to encode the information that you've learned. If you're pushing 12 hours every single day, I can guarantee you're wasting most of those hours because your brain has no time to encode the information and eventually trigger the neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire itself to get the results you want. So first of all, you nail the fundamentals and you create rest and recovery protocols that you follow every single day. Things like meditation, things like going for a walk, things like just not looking at a screen 24/7. Just having the time for yourself to recover from the effort. And then psychology, there's tons of tools that we can use here. But one that I really like the most is cognitive reframing. In essence, is changing the meaning to the stresses. If every time something doesn't go the way you want it to go and you see that as a bad thing, that is going to trigger a stress response. But it's when things don't go the way you want them to go, and instead of labeling them negatively, you label them positively and you become curious about why that thing happened, you literally diminish your hormonal secretion, the stress secretion in your blood. You can make yourself less stressed by changing how you think about a situation, right? So you remove the pressure by actually creating spaces for recovering the day and by changing how your mind deals with these stresses yourself. Then, and this is very important, how do you deal with self-sabotage? Well, you create an identity shift. And instead of judging yourself based off the outcomes, based on the results, I know that this sounds blasphemous, but this is how elite performers do it. You start seeing yourself as a master of your craft, whatever that craft is. You have an agency, you have a SaaS business, you have whatever it is that you have as a business, you see yourself as a master of it. This is crucial because masters can only learn through trial and error and absolute commitment to the process. So if every time that you are hit by a mistake, that you are thinking about quitting because you're not getting the results you want, you remember that you're a master at whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, you give yourself a little bit of time to learn the right way. And what is most important is that you stop equating suffering and pushing and hustling with success, because you start equating success with mastery. Imagine if, Leonardo da Vinci hustled his way into his inventions, or Michelangelo hustled his way into painting the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. No, they never hustled their way in order to create works of art. They mastered themselves. They mastered their ability to do the things they committed on doing. They mastered their craft. So master, this is the new identity, and that means two things. Select your craft. This is very important. And then extend the time frame. This is very important. I'll start with this one. When you see yourself as a master, you extend the time frame in which you judge your results. You're not feeling terrible because you've been stuck at 100K a month for like 4 months, or you cannot break through 10K a month, but instead you commit to being a master. You understand what are the specifics that you need to master in order to continue growing. And this is absolutely fundamental, because the goal is not to win tomorrow. The goal is to win for sure. Maybe in 3 years, maybe in 5, maybe in 10. But you want to wake up one day and say, hey, I'm a master at this. I won. I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve. Not because I hustle in order to get it, but because I mastered every single component of it. And then select your craft very carefully, right? There's very few geniuses in the history of humankind, those that could master several disciplines. Even the best in some specific domain were not good in another domain, no matter how hard they tried. Remember Michael Jordan, he was arguably the best basketball player in history, and he also tried to play in the baseball league. And then, do you remember how that went, right? It didn't go well. Why? Because he was a master at basketball, but he was not as good as he thought he was in baseball, and that's okay. He had to focus on his craft, and I think that when he came back, he won 2 more NBA rings. So select your craft. What are you? Are you an elite marketer? Are you an elite product guy? Are you an elite sales guy? Are you an elite leader? What are you? Make sure that you select and wholeheartedly master that thing. And everything else gets outsourced or delegated. You don't need to do anything. Which leads me to the process disconnect. When you are a master and you have extended the time frame in which you are operating, you end up understanding that it's all about having perfect processes and mastering the right inputs. And if you do not master the inputs, you need to find someone else who actually masters those inputs, which means that you delegate or outsource the things you don't want to do, the things that do not bring you joy, the stuff that you don't like. But it's all about mastering the inputs, mastering the process, making sure that every single week you're hitting all the inputs you need to get eventually where you want to go. It's not about hustling and rushing and focusing on outputs all day, every day, but quite rather, it's all about pulling those results into your life. How? By mastering the most important thing, delegating what you don't want to do to other masters that can help you build that vision, and above all, stop over stressing yourself for a result that will never really arrive the way you want it to arrive. This is the arrival fallacy. And once you really get good at this, you transition, you break the wall, you go from peak to elite. You go from hustle, grinding to consistently being in flow all day, every day, having the time of your life, not suffering because your results do not match your expectations yet. Because that is one of the core killers of entrepreneurs in business, is that they sabotage themselves when the results do not match their expectations. And those who figure this thing out scale very quickly. I've heard people go from 0 to 100K a month in 7 months. I've seen people get there in 15 months, like relatively quickly. And it's never about how much sales and marketing they know. It's about how well they can manage themselves and their minds in business. In other words, untrained founders, untrained entrepreneurs always fail. Self-master entrepreneurs always win because they avoid getting in their own way. And this is a great example of what getting your own way really means. So if you're hitting a wall, understand that it's not how stressed you are, it's quite rather how unstressed you are in order to make good decisions. It's not about pushing and grinding, it's about mastering the few things that actually matter, identify which one those are, and create actual skill development plans and a way of applying those skills, and finally make sure that every single input and system is processed so you eventually get the outcome you want. See you in the next video.